Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to the Christianpreneurs Podcast, where we share messages of hope that will inspire, encourage, and empower Christian entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Sandra Gabriel, and if you ever wondered about how faith and technology can live together, then you're going to want to stay tuned for this episode. We're speaking with Director of FaithTech, Mr. Kevin Burgess, all about bridging the gap between faith and technology. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christianpreneurs Podcast. We have special guest Kevin Burgess, who's going to talk to us all about FaithTech. And I found FaithTech just in my regular browsing through Christian brands and people and professionals. And I just had to learn more about it. And it's been a while that I'm trying to book this interview with FaithTech. So I'm so happy, Kevin, that you can make some time just to, just talk to us about what FaithTech is all about.
It's a pleasure. It's great to be with you.
All right. So Kevin is the full-time director of FaithTech Toronto and Waterloo. He is passionate to see communities of uniquely gifted Christians impact the world through tech. Having arrived in Canada from the UK in January 2018, Kevin has a background in running a web design business with his wife, Ellie, church ministry, including a plant in North Toronto, and as a freelance business consultant into health services in the UK. He is passionate to see God blurring the boundaries in people's lives across their faith, locations, and work. Kevin is married with 2 young children and currently living in Toronto. So my very first question off the bat for anyone who's interested is, what is FaithTech?
Yeah, so you've described it a little bit yourself there in terms of my bio, but FaithTech is essentially a community of people that meet across the intersection of faith and technology. So what we've found is that there's a lot of Christians working out there in the tech sphere, in startup companies, in big tech, or working in a tech job, but maybe in a non-tech company, but extremely gifted and creative individuals. And they're also often part of a church as well. But what they find is that there's been this almost divorce between their tech skills and their spiritual lives, and their spiritual lives aren't well understood in their workplace, and the skills and the innovational thinking they could bring are not really understood or exploited in the church space. So what we do is we stand in that gap and we create a community where Christians who are passionate about tech, who are in tech, who are innovators, who are creators can come together and ask God to use their gifts for the advancement of his kingdom. So we create regular gatherings in the cities that we operate in, where we bring people together, we eat together, we learn together, and we build together. Those are the 3 key things that we do. We like to get people involved in projects, which can be building solutions for local communities, or helping the local church, or helping missions or charities to do things that maybe they've been struggling to do before, or maybe they've just got stuck in a rut with their own thinking. We bring in people who can think well outside the box because they're not restricted by an organizational structure that they've been part of. So this is really what FaithTech is. That's the community and the project side. So out of the community comes these projects, and to accelerate our projects, we do hackathons as well, which will be, James, our founder, lovingly calls these a retreat for geeks, where we get people in a room together for 24 or 48 hours, and we get charities or churches or local community interests to come and just throw problems at the community. And then they form teams around these problems and build solutions literally over the course of the weekend. And I've seen nothing short of miracles happening at these events by the amount of progress that's been made around people finding a role in a team and building something and seeing themselves impassioned by it. So that's the community and the project side. The other important element to what we do in FaithTech is that we've got a part of our activity called Institute, which is where we create content and critical thinking around the intersection of faith and technology. When we've started conversations with other Christians around the different changes that technology is bringing into our lives, some of the disruption it's making, some of the changes to habits in the way we live, some of the new developments in tech around AI, machine learning, VR, gaming. And we've gone into conversations thinking, well, of course, churches and Christians are talking about this all the time because it's so in your face and it's so obvious that it's making massive changes. Quickly realized that they're not. So we've taken it on to create content which enables people to start a conversation about what is my posture as a person of Christian faith towards the different advancements of technology and the different ways technology is encouraging us to live our lives, sometimes telling us to live our lives, and how we respond to that, and also out of that where the opportunities to leverage it for the kingdom are as well. So those are the sort of three things that FaithTech do. So yeah, not a lot.
Not a lot. Yeah. I so love that, because I feel like we've come to a place where we've actually put God outside of everything, outside of schools, outside of work. And I guess it's we've come to this place where we feel like maybe we can't integrate the two, like they have to be separate. And so one of the purposes of this podcast is to let people know that they can be together. We can look at a lot of professionals who are in tech and who are in different industries, that they have integrated faith into what they do. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and for me, the first time I encountered FaithTech was I just went along to a downtown Toronto meetup. And as you read in my bio there, I'd been living a life where I was a worship pastor, I was running a web business with my wife, and I was a business consultant in the health service back in the UK. And I thought none of these areas would meet together, that I profession in one area of life, I had to live my tech profession in another area, and then my business profession in another. And when I walked into this FaithTech gathering, I saw it all as one thing. And that was a real revelation for me, that actually God places on each of us a unique set of gifts that he wants us to use as one, not necessarily as separate lives. I don't think God designed us or created us in order to burn us out. And I see many people who get on that track to burnout because they've got this great range of gifts, and they think that actually they can only be practiced in separate parts of their lives. So that's a really key part of FaithTech, is finding that moment of convergence for people.
Wow. So how did the idea for FaithTech come about? I can imagine, somebody put on the table and they're like, whoa, people are going to accept it. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so there was two key moments in the whole FaithTech conversation. One was James, our founder, was at a Christian missions conference about it would be nearly 4 years ago now, so in 2016. And one of the seminars, a guy came out with this phrase, which was, in the midst of devastation, there is the opportunity for innovation. And he was talking about this in terms of mission and in terms of the, helping to find God's kingdom in different parts of the world. But James couldn't shake this phrase. And living in Waterloo, he saw a tech ecosystem all around him, with startups, with new technology on the forefront of things, and started to ask this question to other people across tech and ministry in the Waterloo environment. Where are the opportunities for innovation in a world which is full of devastation, and how can we actually take what technology is offering and do something for the sake of Jesus with it? So it started in coffee shops, just lit coffee shop conversations. First one he scheduled, 35, 40 people turned up who just saw this thing and thought, wow, this is a great conversation to have. And then as things developed, other cities came on board. Toronto started to have this conversation, and then Chicago and Vancouver and Silicon Valley. And it just seemed to be that God was on the move with this very intersection. And then last year, we started to ask the question, what is FaithTech truly here to do? There was a sense that we were really good at putting on events, like creating a TED Talk environment where we ideate and we share thinking about different elements of faith and technology and how they can integrate. But then we really felt that God was guiding us towards this community model, which was around, yeah, we're still going to have cool events, but actually the focus is bringing people together across this intersection and asking God to use us in whatever way he would have us solving problems in our cities, in our country, and further afield. So it's really gone from this local coffee shop meeting downtown Kitchener to a potential global movement in a little under 4 years, which to me really speaks that God's in the mix here and he's doing something special. We've got 80 people in 25 countries who are interested in setting up a FaithTech hub where they are. So a large part of my job in that is to pull together the model of how we do that by the work we've been doing in Toronto and Waterloo and putting a playbook and some systems around that. But we truly feel that God's starting a global conversation and that the opportunity for innovation, but also international collaboration on big problems of our time using tech could be awe-inspiring.
Absolutely. I'm just curious to know, since you started, I know this is something that you and your team have felt called to. Was there any part of this calling that you weren't expecting that came as a surprise, where you might have felt like, this is too much?
Yeah, goodness. I mean, my personal story was, I came to Canada with my wife in 2018 to plant a church. That's what we thought we were here for. If God told us exactly how everything was going to play out, we may not have come. So I think God knows exactly how to guide us in these scenarios.
He gets to leave out some details, right?
Exactly. Because back in the UK, I would have been FaithTech. What's that all about? I mean, goodness me. So I think that I was surprised by the moment I bumped into this tribe of people, where there was this moment of convergence, which then for me over a period of months became a calling. I was really surprised by it. I never would have imagined or planned or put together the complete fit for where my life has led to, that this expression of mission, of business, of tech all comes together. So yeah, I'm completely surprised and happily surprised at that. For James, it was a similar story. James was in recruitment. He was, that was his job, and he had a really good, business career ahead of him in that. And he just felt, as the FaithTech thing was growing, that the pull of God on his life to make this a full-time expression just got greater and greater, to the point that then he left his job and turned to his friends and his family and his network and said, hey guys, we still need to pay the mortgage. How about you support me and help make this FaithTech thing happen? So like any true startup, where you often start with an injection of friend and family support to get things off the ground, that's really the model FaithTech started with. So I think James would say he was surprised by how quickly this came about, and also how he transitioned out of what could have been a really great, secure business role into this sort of knife edge of ministry, if you like. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Like I said, God leaves out some details when he's calling us. So your founder, James Kelly, as you mentioned, he suggests that innovation is the key for churches to make an impact on our cities. Do you believe that churches might be against technology and faith? Why or why not?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So thus opens this topic. We find that it's not so much that churches are against tech, and there are some churches that have really embraced this. But I certainly find that it's fewer that have really embraced this. It's more about an understanding or a misunderstanding that there's this whole concept that and I still hear teaching on this now, even in this age that we're in this generation that we're in, that tech is somehow idolatrous, that it's somehow a replacement for God, and that it's somehow something that if you lean on tech too hard, that actually you're putting it in God's place. And there is, there's examples in the Bible, and we need to realize that the Bible talks about technology. It's in there. There is a theology that comes through scriptural study that demonstrates that innovation, that creation, that technology was a key part of biblical history. God is a creator, and this whole concept that to use tech for things that are kingdom focused is somehow idolatrous, I think is a gross misunderstanding. Yeah. But because actually technology can be used for awesomely redemptive purposes as well. And when you start to dream about that, I can understand why, leadership of some churches could get overwhelmed, because what you could do with tech is so massively beyond what you've been able to do before, that actually it might just be easier to leave it to one side for a moment. But at the same time, if we are to talk to the culture in which we are placed, we need to leverage in a pure and Christian and Jesus-focused way the tools that our society has. The first thing that the printing press was used for was to print the Bible. Yes. And that was a major mission tool. So why are we not making sure that AI, that machine learning, that VR, that augmented reality, the gaming, the blockchain, the first things they're being put to are not, why shouldn't they be for missional purposes? Yeah. And I think it's a real shame that we've lagged behind in that now. That, you look at the Reformation, you look at how the Bible was published and how that had a massive spreading missional effect on the sharing of the Christian message across the world. We've almost allowed those with less pure motivations to get their hands on tech and to start using it for those things first. And I think we've missed an opportunity there, but I still think there is a massive opportunity there. And this is when we communicate with churches and with groups of pastors, which we often do in different towns around this area. And James speaks at conferences in different parts of the US as well. We just encourage church leaders to look at where the opportunities are and start to engage with people that are probably already right there in their congregation. Often working the soundboard or changing the PowerPoint. But actually they've got these tech gifts which go way far beyond where they're being leveraged at the moment. And the church could really take hold of that and see some kingdom advancement as a result. So I think it's a deeper question than whether they're purely against technology. I think it's more about the messaging on technology within the church is just looking at where it's gone wrong or been used badly. And there's not enough messaging on about how this can be used positively for the kingdom. And we see it as part of our job through the projects that we do and through the communities that we bring together to advocate for how powerful a tool this can be and how creative a tool it can be. Yeah. You need to look back at, Noah's Ark in the Bible. He was given a blueprint for this crazy big ship in the middle of a desert. That if that's not technology that was done in an environment where it was completely unexpected, where it actually went, he was ridiculed for building this thing, yet it was put to redemptive purpose. We need to look at examples like that from the Bible and just say, why maybe there's parts of technology and technological advancement that are the Noah's Ark of our time that could actually save parts of our society from the devastation of what's going on, whether it's poverty or marginalization or just not being reached by the gospel. And I think churches really need to start thinking at that level and start to disrupt how they structure themselves and how they do their activities, to get out of the we'll just do more of what we've always done mindset. And there are many churches doing that. I don't want to paint a picture that everyone's there, but I just imagine the positive, powerful impact that could be had if more and more churches started thinking like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you highlighted about, Noah's Ark and the Ark being like technology, because that's one of the first things I learned when I was learning about technology and communications, and how any innovation or idea that changes the game in terms of our world and our society is paper was a technology, because now we're able to write down a message on paper and send it, like you said, the printing press that was able to print our Bibles, and now we have Bibles all over the world. It's the number one best-selling book all over the world for years. People kind of think of technology as this one, like the nuts and bolts type thing, but it's so much broader than that, and it could be any innovation that is used to change, change our landscape in a sense. And so when you look at things like the internet and social media, my sister mentioned to me one time that, God needs warriors online. He needs people like you and me online to see what's going on and to try to reach people there, because it's about reaching people where they are. So I love the idea of, using technology, but continuing to evolve with that. So, before internet came along, there was, paper, and now there's internet. How do we integrate with that? And then there's going to be AI. How do we integrate with that? How do we keep God in the midst of all this innovation and stop this thing where we're separating him out, saying, well, he doesn't belong there. God is everywhere. So we have to find ways to kind of keep him integrated as we go. Yeah,
absolutely. And just to add to that, there's a sense that I've got as well where, I went and spoke to probably about 40 pastors in one room who just wanted to hear what this whole FaithTech thing was all about. And I asked them about how many feel that they had their life disrupted by technology. And a few put their hands up, and, I just explored with them, okay, those of you who are saying you haven't had your life disrupted by technology, have you ever used Airbnb? And oh yeah, well I have. And you go, well, okay, not only has your life been changed by that, but you've actually been part of the disruption of the whole accommodation industry. And then I asked about Uber, and you can see where this is going. And I think as people of faith, as Christians, there's two ways we can treat this. We can be passively disrupted by technology, so we can let it happen to us. Or we can actively, proactively engage with technology, even disrupt it, or disrupt the way we're doing things, leveraging technology in a good way. But that requires some thinking and some conversation around proactively, what is my posture as a Jesus follower towards this tech, or towards social media, or towards how much I let tech engage with my life, and what is my Christian posture to how I then use that tech to further the kingdom of God. Because we shouldn't separate out the furtherance of what God is doing from parts of our lives. So, oh, my social media life's sort of over here, and then my Christian life's over there. And I see that happening all the time. And it's actually, well, how am I being salt and light on social media? How am I being salt and light through the way I use different products on my phone? How am I being salt and light in how much my family engages with technology on a daily basis? There's all this proactive way we can deal with it, rather than just passively letting the disruption happen to us and getting carried along in the wave. So I think there's those different angles on it, which are really important for us to grasp as Christians.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add what you just said, we have to look at Jesus, who was the original disruptor, because he came and did everything against what we thought the way it was supposed to be. Absolutely. And so, following his example to say, no, we're going to change it up. God is not dead. God is alive, and he's in everything. So in the way to keep him with whatever's going on, the changes, we have to fight to actually keep him there, as opposed to just going along with people saying, let's separate him. The one that touches my heart the most is how we've taken God out of schools. We have children growing up every which way. Not to judge anybody, but we don't have God in the schools anymore. And I feel like that's just a huge disservice to our children. So before, I'm not going to add to it anymore. I don't want to go down the wrong road, and next thing you know, I'm getting hate mail. What would you say is the key to getting more churches and faith-based organizations to adopt technology as a solution to reaching more people and spreading the gospel?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the keys is really taking our heads out of the sand and looking around and seeing what's going on. So we need to be under no illusion that actually we're part of what's happening now is, possibly the biggest industrial revolution we've experienced in the past 2 or 3 centuries. The last really big one was the evolution of electricity, and how that changed all these factories from steam-based organizations into and people were writing papers saying, oh, electricity will never take off, we can't grasp that. And then some factories started using it, cutting their costs by 2/3, and then suddenly have a competitive advantage over everybody else. And then the world pretty quickly caught up after that. But looking at the advent of big data, of AI, of different ways of communicating with people, and this is as big an industrial revolution as any of that was. And I think that we need to really take our heads out of the sand and look at the dangers and the opportunities that offers. And I think for churches, this comes right down to the very way we're organized. You know, where is the part of the church structure that is thinking innovationally about how they leverage technology to reach the community around them? Because whilst you may live within 200 meters of someone's house, the chances of them coming out and setting foot in your church may be, you know, 10 out of 100. Who are the people thinking in your church about how you can build a bridge to that house, get someone to come in? What you're using tech to provide a welcome mat into the kingdom of God, you know, and there's structural things we can do, there's conversations we can be having, there's just shedding some of the fear around this stuff. I think coming together as a community of Christians in God's presence to discuss these things means that fear can't exist. And I think that needs to be a step that people take to really get their heads around how to leverage this stuff. And I think that looking at some of the things that are already happening and partnering in those, you know, in a lot of ways, God's already using tech. It's more a question of, do we want to put ourselves to asking God what he's doing so that we can partner in with him in making that happen? Like you just said, he's everywhere, he's doing stuff, he's on the move. A lot of it is about, okay, God, so how are you moving in people in our church community, in our larger community, and in the tech ecosystem to see some amazing stuff happen in the name of Jesus? And how can we become part of that? And that's not a massive posture shift. That's a prayer. That's an attitude of heart. And I think if we start there, you'll start to see amazing things happen. And I think church leaders and pastors will see things happen that they could not have thought of themselves. And I think another key is collaboration. And that to me is one of the key things that tech makes possible. The world is much smaller. You know, you can have a church in Canada communicating with a church in Thailand or something like that, and it's like you're in the same room. And why not? You know, we need to start taking down these denominational and sort of brand walls that exist, and these visible barriers, and see how God can use us as a body of Christ together, having different roles, having different ways of doing things, but truly operating in the way Paul described when he talked about the body of Christ. And I think that's one of the really refreshing things we see in FaithTech is that, you know, in our Waterloo community, we've got guys from the Mennonite community, we've got charismatic evangelicals in there, we've got Baptists, we've got Presbyterians. You don't even notice it because it's not even mentioned. They're there to see tech leverage for the kingdom of God. And whatever flavor or denomination you are, I think that nowadays, and with the generation we live in, we need to be taking those walls down and collaborating in a really innovative way. So I think this sense of collaboration and then being able to distribute the gifts around the body of Christ is a key step in the right direction.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a part of the Bible that talks about how we all have different gifts.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you think about the fact that a body works together, you know, hands and feet and fingers and toes and eyes and nose and all of that, the idea of collaboration really starts to make more sense, because we can't be a body and, you know, the hand is operating on its own, trying to feed itself. And it's like, well, you're not the mouth, or you're not the taste buds and things like that. And just bringing everyone together so that we can have this functioning body. The idea of collaboration, it just makes sense. And I was talking to someone just yesterday who they're trying to collaborate with people, and I guess they feel this sense of competition and they're not going to work with them. And I feel like these are humps that we have to try to get over. So outside of just acknowledging the fact that we need to bring together, you know, innovation in churches, but also bring each other together, like outside of the technology, this actually getting the people together, right?
Yeah. and recognizing that, you know, technology goes beyond social media and a website, that there's so much more to it, and there's so much more going on. There's so much more being invented on a daily basis.
Yes.
That, you know, if people could just get their heads around that or start to explore it, you imagine the potential of moving beyond where we are now.
Yeah, you're so right. So moving off of the faith tech, we want to talk about you a little bit and your faith. What came first for you? Was it the faith or the tech?
Oh, goodness.
You could be honest.
Yeah, no, for me, it's difficult to say which came first because they were sort of separate entities in my life. You know, I did have a period when I wasn't following the Lord, and during that period, I was probably using tech as a means of amusement, as a way of connecting with others and stuff like that, and just filling a gap that maybe was a God-shaped hole in my life. But it's weird. It's difficult for me to put a timeline on which came first in terms of, did I meet God first or did I meet tech first? I think I met Jesus first. But I think what Jesus has now done is brought together those parts of my life which I thought were pretty separate. So for me, it's not a question of which came first, it's of how did they come together. And I'd say that was only a very recent thing for me in terms of seeing this convergence. And it was a great disruption to me because my thinking had always been that they had to be separate, because working in the tech world, you know, we did some work for Christian organizations and stuff like that, but it didn't meet with the work I was doing in the church. And my work as a freelance business consultant was not meeting with the work I did in the church. I look at it now and say, oh, do you know what? Some of the analytics I was doing as a business consultant would have been so helpful for my church community, to look at the community we were living in, to look at how we were engaging with people within the congregation. And I'm like, but that was just kept separate because, you know, that there was a thing in my heart that saw them as separate. And that was the part of my life which paid the mortgage, and the church stuff, that was my real Jesus work, you know. Whereas now I see people across the tech ecosystem who are looking for that meaning in work, and often thinking that the only meaningful Christian work they can do is if they give up their job and go and work for a church or a charity or a mission agency, but then suddenly realizing that they're actually missionaries in tech is a real release for them, because they're like, there's meaning to what I do. Just being here is meaningful, just being in this place. But working in the Microsoft AI department, which is probably one of the most strategic places to be in the world right now, as a Christian, is quite important. And so, you know, finding that for me has been a revelation, and seeing it happen in others has been a revelation. So first and second, I don't know, but when they came together, I can almost put a day on that.
That's amazing. I love the idea of recognizing your gifts where you are and that they can be used, because again, going back to this whole thing about separation, when you come to that point where you realize, wait a minute, you know, I'm working in the AI department of Microsoft, and I could actually use some AI in infusing more of the gospel and more of Jesus into the church and outside of the church and into communities. So that when you come to that point, that must be a really beautiful place to come.
And even from a moral and ethical standpoint, we need Christian voices in those rooms where decisions are being made about how AI is used, because it could be so abused, it could be so misused, it could be so leveraged for, you know, an undercurrent of evil, that actually to have a Christian in there, almost like a prophet in that environment, saying, actually, we need to be careful with this technology. We need to treat it with respect, and therefore treat the world with respect that we're implementing this into. And you look at it with people who are in key spots in social media companies, or in key spots in virtual reality and gaming creation companies. And you know, how, do you know what, we do need Christian voices in here, and we need people to be the light in those parts of the industry. So yeah, absolutely.
Amen. I totally agree with that. We need Christians everywhere. I kind of see us as plants here and there. We need them in the offices. We need them on the streets. We need them in the stores. We need them everywhere. I love that. How easy or difficult was it for you to grasp the concept of aligning the two? So you said recently coming into FaithTech, that's where they met, but I could imagine the time between them coming together and before that. What was that like?
Yeah, goodness. I mean, one of the reasons my wife and I even considered moving to Canada was because we felt God was challenging our lifestyle back in the UK. You know, you hear about bivocational pastors. I was a trivocational pastor, and whilst they say you can work part-time for a church, I think you just get a part-time salary. It's still like the whole of your life. And then running a business is the whole of your life again. And then working for the National Health Service is another whole of your life. So I was looking at 75-hour weeks in terms of work. And, you know, we had 2 young kids, and we really felt the Lord saying, guys, it doesn't have to be like this. And we just felt this uprooting starting to happen in our lives. And, you know, we left our town in the UK where we were within 1 or 2 miles of our closest relatives. So my parents, Ellie's parents, my sister, my brother-in-law, we all lived in the same town. So to be uprooted from that took a bit of time with the Lord speaking to us and things like that. And then when we came here, you know, I was planting the church, but we kept our web business running, and I was still like, okay, Lord, this is better, but we're still in a place where we're working to make ends meet, and I still felt like I was on a one-way track to burnout at some point of my life, and just that moment where I met other people for whom this stuff could live together in one place. It wasn't so much that it was difficult to find that. It was more about the release I felt when I did, which was actually, I wonder if there is a calling on my life which brings this all into one. And I wonder if there's other people out there who struggle with this and who think, you know, God's gifted me in these different places, but it's going to burn me out. Whereas God's sitting there saying, I have a unique calling for you. I just need you to yield and let me take you to that. And we had situations, you know, immigrating to Canada is no mean feat. It's quite a full-on commitment, and you know, it's not easy to set up from scratch in a new country. And I think that for us had taken us to a place where we just had to trust God with the future. And that's where the convergence started to happen, because we really had no choice but to yield and to say, okay, God, what's the plan here? What are you doing? And then conversation started about, you know, I got a job spec from FaithTech which said, have you got experience in ministry? Do you have experience in tech? Do you have experience in business? Wow. If so, we're looking for someone. And I was like, oh, well, there it is. So there was real difficulty in the journey to that point. But I feel that was God taking us to a place, and we had to be open-handed enough to come to that place where we were open to a unique calling on those different parts of our life and my life. So if I'm honest, I don't know if everyone ever gets to that place where they can truly let go of everything and say, okay, Lord, what are you doing with this? Because that's a really vulnerable place to be. And I think God just fashioned our circumstances to take us to that place. So it's not something I would wish on someone, because we went through some real difficult moments in getting to that point. But we wouldn't have it any other way now in hindsight.
It's always when you're coming to that place where you have to trust God, it's like you come to the edge of the mountain and it's like, okay, there's no more road. I can't fly, you know, to taking that leap and then just letting God catch you. That's a very scary place to be, and you're right.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Can you share your story about your life before Christ and how your life changed when you found Christ?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was brought up in a Christian home. So, you know, I feel really deeply indebted to my parents who brought me up with Christian values and morals. And but during my teens, I grew all independent and, you know, self-thinking and, I need to find this stuff for myself. Whereas actually what I was looking for was an excuse to live life how I wanted to, and to join in with my buddies on the way they were living and all that sort of thing. So my life from my mid-teens through to my mid-20s was a pretty hedonistic affair. I did exactly what I want when I wanted, and with often falling into bad circles of friends and into bad habits and into bad scenarios. But my life before Christ, what I realize now looking back on it, was I was always trying to fill a hole. I was always trying to find some sort of fulfillment. And I didn't realize at the time that the only one who could fill that was Jesus. Mm-hmm. So for me, the big shift came when, not dissimilar to our story with, the convergence of all these different parts of our lives, but actually I had a whole bunch of situations converge on me, a bit like when the prodigal son gets to the point of eating his. I
was thinking the prodigal son as you were talking.
that actually, I came to a point where I felt truly empty, and I felt truly hollow, and I felt completely bereft. That I reached out to God and said, "If you're there, how about you show me, and we see what happens." And that was a very, very significant turning point in my life. One of those moments where I can still picture where I was, and the room I was in when I actually fell to my knees and prayed that prayer, because everything else had fallen out from underneath me. And then the way God turned my life around since then was miraculous, completely supernatural. But there's a part to that story that my parents would tell, which is again about yield, was that I was brought up in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, and there was a fairly strict religious upbringing sort of style there, and they found it very difficult to release me to the Lord, particularly when I was carving this prodigal path. And it was actually around the time when my parents consciously said to God, "Okay, we release our son to you. We release him into your care and entrust him to you for the future. We need to love him, but let go of him." And at that point, God really started to move on me. And I don't think that's any coincidence that God was like, "Okay, there's yield here. They've given him over, and I can now do my work without any limitation." Since then, my life's just chronicled by these key moments where God's moved in and done something special. And the latest of these being our move to Canada, and then this stuff happening with FaithTech. It's just been a continuation of a particular path that God's drawn me along. As becoming a worship pastor. I never have planned that when I was at college, and stuff like that. But then using that in a weird way, the pastoral gifts I've been given now get used in the FaithTech community, which is awesome, because I get to use it alongside other skills that He's given me. So my life before Christ was empty, absolutely empty. People would have asked me at the time, "How you feeling?" I'll be like, "I love it. I can do exactly what I want, when I want, and with whom I want." Mm-hmm. But now I look back and I just see someone who it felt like I was aging myself by 10 years every year just by the way I was living. Now I just have an energy and a sense of God calling me forth that I didn't have before. And there's not really anything that can replace that. So very contrasting times of my life, but still the prodigal years still play a key part in my story, and they allow me to speak into the lives of others with credibility and with, "Do you know what, my friend, I was exactly where you are now," and I'm able to speak into that, and I'm able to see people, around the startup communities that we're part of here, living that sort of self-centered, self-focused, hedonistic lifestyle, but able to be talking into that and just saying, "How's that filling you up right now? How's that really leaving you satisfied, or do you just want more?" And I think God uses our experience. I don't think God would have wished for me to be like that, but I believe that God is using it for His glory now. So I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah, I talk a lot about wilderness phase. I've gone through it. Lots of people have gone through it, and it's really this time. The beautiful thing about it is that when you do survive it, you're able to now use it to lift others up. So I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have any fears about being open with your faith within your business? I would assume no.
So yeah, I mean, I talk about this from the perspective of the web and graphics business that my wife and I still run. I mean, she really takes the lead in that now, and again, we found ourselves at a spot now where both the kids are at school, and Ellie's now really able to take on that side of business, which is great because she's moving in her gifts and her talents with that. But when we are very, very intentional about how we do business and about who we do business with and how we engage with them. We've always wanted to be a company that's prided on its integrity, but not just so we look good, but because we have Jesus as the core of why we're doing this. And we certainly, I feel that that's a witness in the world where, you see some of the ways companies operate or agencies operate, and it's like, we can't be like that. Jesus did not call us to put the dollar above people's well-being, to put gaining a few extra bucks here above the standard of honesty. And we're really clear with our clients in terms of that. So we try to live out our faith purely by the integrous way we do business and the way we engage with people, the causes we align ourselves with. So we love doing business with people who are promoting a particular cause that we feel is advancing the kingdom of God, whether it's an overtly Christian one or actually one of those undercurrents of social or community change that is a real kingdom value. And we love doing business with them. And I think in a weird way, one of our best witnesses is the testimonies we get on our website from time to time, where people say, these guys play it straight and they play it true, and we love doing work with them because of that. Yeah. So I think that people underestimate that sort of witness. We don't necessarily go into a potential client with Gideon Bibles and give them out and say, hey, all right, we're going to do an altar call at the end of the meeting. When they ask us why we operate how we operate, we're not ashamed to tell them that. And we say, actually, we believe in a code of life that was modeled by Jesus. And even if they're people who just think Jesus was a good guy, who was a bit of a prophet, who walked the world, actually they can see in action his words. And if they can see that through us, it's very humbling, but it's also to us one of our most powerful witnesses. So yeah, that's how we try and live it out. And we're in a place now where we're starting to pull in extra freelancers into the business to cater for some of the work we're getting on board, and we're really intentional about who we do business with there as well. So we're looking for people who will have a congruency with us in terms of the moral and ethical outlook on life and how they like to work. So particularly in this world where the hustle and the whole freelance culture is, you work yourself into the ground until you can get that nice retirement to the Maldives or whatever. It's like, actually, we would like people to be able to work with us and keep their family right and not have to work 300 hours a week or whatever to make that happen. And I think there's countercultural stuff that you can do that speaks of Jesus without even saying his name.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually asking my sister the other day about, this might be a bit of an extreme, but I think about the Great Commission, where we are meant to make disciples. Mm-hmm. And I have a PR company, and I think, well, how am I going to use my business to make disciples out of my customers or my followers? And I don't think the idea is that everybody has to be a disciple. It's like you said, you don't walk into meetings and hand out Bible and it's prayer and worship time. But just letting people know the way that you operate is the beginning, that we follow a line of integrity, we follow a line of core values. And when they turn around and they say, well, how do you do this? How do you manage this? And you give the glory to God. I think that's where the making of disciples comes, because now they're going to want to say, well, I want to learn more about this. You're so calm in what you do, and you're not fearful, and you pray about everything and things like that. So I think that's a really, really good thing to always have that at the forefront, because it may not be the thing that catapults them into following Christ, but it could be the thing that it's the seed that's planted, and now they're saying, you know what, I want to learn more about that.
it's really encouraging. There are people out there doing this in the in this whole tech ecosystem as well. I met someone the other day who was a co-founder of a big tech startup in Toronto that took off and got bought out. The dream of any tech entrepreneur. We got our startup, we got paid out, but his whole thing with his co-founders was actually, we want to be treating our staff in a way that we can pay them a paycheck. That means they're not worried about making ends meet for their family, and they're not having to overwork to make that happen. And as soon as the company, grew and started to shift away from that, the co-founder, he said, "Okay, I'm gonna leave this now and do something else." And he just felt the Lord call him out of that to do something else. And now he's doing another startup. And he goes, "Well, the model of this startup is we make lots of money that we give away to the kingdom." And I'm like, what a witness that is, that this person is not just here to make himself rich.
Yeah.
And that is so countercultural in this entrepreneurial sort of environment you find yourself in, where the dream is work the 300 hours a week, get yourself to that nice buyout, and then you can buy your private jet or whatever and not need to worry again. And it's a false dream. It's founded on stuff that leaves you empty. And that's what, that's why I love it when I meet people who are willing to put these kingdom principles into place right from the start. And then if they feel that it's not kingdom anymore, they're, well, okay, I'll find kingdom wherever I need to find it. And to see that strength of character and that ability to stay in when you need to, but to walk away when you need to as well is really inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you share with tech entrepreneurs who want to incorporate faith in their business, but maybe they're a little shy about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, just recapping what I said when I talked about how Ellie and I tried to incorporate our faith into our business is not underestimating the example that good kingdom-based integrity can be, particularly in the business environment we're in nowadays, where, the stories you hear are often of, bad business practice, of corruption, of profiteering, of seeking to exploit those who don't have the power to protect themselves and things like that. And actually going into business and right at the beginning, setting out your principles, setting out your limitations and your non-negotiables, I think is a really good way of exercising your faith in a really practical way. So for me, right at the beginning, when Ellie and I got our first client for the web business, he was a guy who was looking at capital markets and saying, actually, these are designed badly. These are designed to generate more money for people who already have money. And he says, that's greed, and that's not the way this thing should operate. So he started this whole think tank about turning the capital markets upside down. And this was our first web client, if you like. And we just got so involved with what he was talking about. We're like, okay, we've not even really started this business yet, but let's just set down some lines, some non-negotiables that we're going to carry, however big or whatever this business gets, that carries us through. And my feeling is that the lines of the non-negotiables, the culture, the ethos that we put in, were ones that we still hold on to now. That we will not put this before our family, that we will operate in integrity and truth even when it's difficult for a client to hear, that we will work with people, that we will not work with people who go against clear kingdom values. And these sort of three key principles have taken us right through. And I'd encourage any tech entrepreneur, no matter how small of an idea this startup is to think about those non-negotiables now and to say, actually, if this thing grows or if it doesn't grow, these are the principles I will hold on. The great thing is we've already got the management book to set it out called the Bible, and
Exactly.
and you can find the principles right there.
That's right.
But it's which ones that you really feel called into, and how to operate with wisdom. I think that there is a supernatural element to wisdom that people who are really following closely to God get, that others might not. And that becomes really apparent in those meeting rooms and in those sales conversations and in those solution building opportunities. And I think, like, seeking that wisdom and praying for it and asking God regularly for it is massive. It's a really big part of being a Christian in business. And with that, I would also say an undercurrent of prayer constantly is a key. You know, I'm not one who leans right into a prosperity gospel or anything, but I found the best meetings I've ever had are the ones where I've prayed deeply about them beforehand. And some of the most difficult meetings I've had have been when I've prayed about them before, but actually we've been able to get through those meetings, whereas before they may have been complete train wreck. So I think an undercurrent of prayer is absolutely key, and recognizing that no prayer you make is insignificant. That even if it's for the smallest element of a part of your business that you're praying for, the fact that you're willing to lay that before the Lord is a true sign of a heart after Him. So yeah, I would encourage people that, you know, your actions speak way louder than your words. So, you know, and we're in a society now where verbally evangelizing is pretty much not allowed in a lot of business environments. So actually, your actions do speak up way louder than your words can, and that can lead into conversations. In fact, I just had lunch with someone today, and he said this golden phrase, which was, and he was a successful business leader, and he now mentors young entrepreneurs, and he said, you know, do you realize you're only ever one good question away from a spiritual conversation with someone? And he said, you know, how do you get the question? Is you pray before you meet someone, and God will give you that question during the meeting. And that's something that I just learned that 2 hours ago, but you look at it and then you realize how it's happened in the past. Actually, I asked that guy, you know, when was the last time you went on a date with your wife? Yeah. And he'll go, oh, wow, we don't do that anymore. You're into a spiritual conversation. Yeah. And, you know, there's some really cool stuff that happens when you just ask God to impart things to you as you do business. Yeah. And again, it's you're not separating your faith from your work then, and that's the key takeaway. Yeah.
Once you bring Him into everything, He shows up. He's not going to say, oh, I don't have time right now, I can't make it. He's actually going to be there. So when you invite Him into anything that you're doing, he's there. That's awesome.
And there's just one key thing to that as well is this whole concept of identity. And this is something I've probably preached on it in churches 3 times in the last 2 years, because it's such a key message that actually God does not identify you just by what you do. And particularly as entrepreneurs, we can feel that our identity is fostered in what we're able to do or what we're able to achieve or the tasks, the functions that we have, that actually just coming back to that place where actually God views us through the lens of Christ. Therefore, our primary place of identity is relationship with Him, as in what we tell Him about and what we hear from Him and how we exchange on an intimate level with God. And that just completely blows out of the water this performance mentality you can get stuck in. That actually you get into that Ephesians 2:10 place where you realize we're God's handiwork. We're on this earth to co-create with Him, to partner with what He already is doing, and do those through Christ Jesus. So actually anything that we do it through Him anyway. And it just completely lifts this performance mentality off. And you see people working with that level of peace. That as well as is a witness in my mind.
Wow, that's amazing. I have to know if you prayed before this meeting, because my next message that I'm speaking about is about identity in Christ.
Oh,
working out of Ephesians as well. I'm like, maybe awesome. God told you I was working on it.
I'll send you my podcast link from the last church.
That's awesome. Look at God working. All right. So before I let you go, just let us know where we can find you online.
So just go to FaithTech.com. We're right there. And there's Hub, and we're also FaithTech Hub on Twitter. And I think it's FaithTech Hub on Instagram as well. So FaithTech.com. I mean, if you just go to the website, you'll find all the links there, and go from there. If anyone who hears this wants to get a bit more involved, we also have a Slack channel. So just email me at kevin@faithtech.com, And there you can link up with faith techers across the globe and see all the projects that we're doing and the stuff that's going on there. So yeah, lots of engagement points there.
Awesome. I think I will join you guys on Slack because I'm on Slack too, and I didn't know you were on Slack.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I will send you an invite.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time for us today. Hopefully you come back, maybe when we've evolved a little bit more and we have technology.
Absolutely.
We can talk again about like, look at what we're talking about. Now they're doing
it. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much, Kevin. Have a good day.
Okay. Cheers. You too. Bye-bye now.
That's our podcast for today. I hope you enjoyed it. But as always, I don't want to leave you without taking some action towards building your brand. So if there's anything that you want to hear about, anything you want to learn more about, if there's anything that you're struggling with or you need prayer for, please feel free to send me an email to thechristianpreneursco@gmail.com. Also, if you're new to this podcast, check us out on christianpreneurs.co, where you can sign up to receive updates and resources that I only share by email. So check us out at christianpreneurs.co and sign up today for free. Also, you can check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Just do a search for Christianpreneurs and make sure you see my smiling face before you hit follow, or to make it all easier, just visit us on christianpreneurs.co and you'll find all of our social media links there. Last but not least, if you love this podcast, please don't hesitate to share it with your friends, leave us a review, and don't forget to subscribe. Once again, I thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful and blessed day.